Miss Flora McFlimsey's Christmas Eve. Once there was an old doll whose name was Flora McFlimsey. She lived in a toy cupboard in the attic with a box of Tiddlywinks and Mother Goose book and Gulliver's Travels and a Noah's Ark and a fat sheep on wheels and an old doll trunk. She had not always lived in the attic. No, indeed. She had once belonged to a little girl who had, with red-topped shoes, who played with her on the nursery below. But the little girl had long ago grown up and married, and Miss Flora McFlimsey had been put away in the attic and forgotten. There she sat next to the little trunk in the corner of the toy cupboard, wearing a faded silk dress and a straw hat with a blue ribbon on it. She led a rather lonely life, of course. There was no one to talk to except the fat sheep, who could not even say "baa" anymore. Indeed, she would have been quite lonely, except that she had one visitor, Timothy Mouse, who often stopped in for a chat in the evenings after he'd made the rounds of the house. Flora McFlimsey enjoyed Timothy Mouse, but his visits. He brought her news of the family downstairs and what the children had for supper, and bits of gossip about the toys in the playroom. One cold winter night, when outside the snow was falling fast, Timothy Mouse appeared as usual through the little hole in the corner of the toy cupboard. He always said "cheerio" when he came in, but this evening he didn't say anything at all. He just wiggled his ears and blinked his eyes and ran 3 times around the floor of the cupboard after his tail. Then he stopped and said in a low voice, "There are strange things going on downstairs in the living room tonight, Miss McFlimsey. Stockings are hanging from the mantelpiece, and what is worse, a tree with shiny things all over is growing right up out of the floor." "Oh," said poor McFlimsey, sighing softly. "It must be Christmas Eve." "What's that?" asked Timothy Mouse. "Why, that's the most wonderful night of the year," said poor McFlimsey. "It's when Santa Claus comes down the chimney and puts presents in the children's stockings and under the Christmas tree. And people sing carols "Ah," said Timothy Mouse, who did not like to think there was anything he didn't know. "It all sounds rather silly to me. I prefer birthdays with plenty of cake crumbs lying around." "Well, I must be on my way," he added, and he disappeared through the hole in the corner of the cupboard. After he'd gone, Miss Flora McFlimsey sat thinking about her first Christmas Eve. She wondered how someone had taken her out of the long white box tied with satin ribbons and put her in a little red rocking chair under the Christmas tree. She remembered the blue velvet dress. She had worn the hat to match and a muffin of ermine fur and tiny gold locket and chain. Early Christmas morning, a little girl in a fluffy white dress had come running in and cried, "Oh, isn't she beautiful?" and had hugged and kissed her. There was the tree, all shining and beautiful, with an angel on the top. In the firelight, Miss McFlimsey could see the stockings hanging in a row from the mantel. Everything was still as a mouse. She crept over into the shadows and looked up at the Christmas tree. "It is the most beautiful tree in all the world," she whispered. "And this is the most wonderful night in all the year." Suddenly there was a little scratching around in the chimney. Goodness, what was that? cried Miss Flora McFlimsey. She hid in the shadow of the big chair. There was more scratching. Then the sound of feet stamping on the hearth rug. Flora McFlimsey peeked around the corner of the chair. There was Santa Claus taking a big pack off his back and talking to himself. Dear, dear, he was saying, I'm a doll short. Here's a bride doll for Susie, and the doll with the red coat for Toto. But there's no doll for Diana. It must have been dropped out when I dove through the snow cloud. Dear, 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 after all those letters she wrote me, too. He kept on saying, dear, dear, while he was stuffing presents into the stockings and piling through them under the Christmas tree. All at once he caught sight of Miss Flora McFlimsey, peeking around from behind the chair. Well, 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 he said, and who are you, please? Miss Flora McFlimsey trembled, but she stepped out into the firelight and said in a tiny voice, Good evening, sir. My name is Miss Flora McFlimsey. I live in the attic, and I came down to see the Christmas tree. Well, now, my dear, said Santa Claus, it seems to me I've seen you before. Santa Claus picked up Miss Flora McFlimsey and looked hard at her. Why, yes, I remember you very well. It was a long time ago, to be sure. Then his frown disappeared and his face lighted. Why, of course, you'll be just the doll for Diana. And he sat her down under the Christmas tree with the bride doll and the doll in the red coat. And now, my dear, he said, I've a great deal more to do this before morning. So good night to you all and a Merry Christmas. And with that, he was up the chimney and away. There was a scurry of hoofs on the roof, then all was still again. Miss Flora McFlimsey sat up straight and proud. She felt as if something wonderful were about to happen. Then all at once, Flora McFlimsey heard someone whispering. It was the tall doll in the red coat. Did you see that scarecrow of an old doll over there? She asked. Yes, answered the bride doll. Isn't she a sight? Did you ever in all your life see such funny old-fashioned clothes? And that straw hat on Christmas Eve? And they both laughed till they almost fell over. Just wait until the children see her. They'll send her right back into the attic where she belongs, said the doll in the red coat. All of the happy feelings suddenly left Flora McFlimsey. It's true, she said to herself, I'm out of style. My clothes are out of style. I had better go right back to the attic before the children see me. She tried to stand up, but all her joints were grown stiff again, and she could not even move an arm. So there was nothing to do but sit there till the children came in the morning and saw her. Tears came down into Miss Flora McFlimsey's eyes and rolled down her cheeks. If only Timothy Mouse had not told her it was Christmas Eve, she would never, never, never have left his toy cupboard in the attic. Suddenly, from behind the fire engine, a little shadow darted out and ran 3 times around in a circle. It was Timothy Mouse. He stopped close to Miss McFlimsey and wiggled his ears and whispered, Cheerio, help is coming soon. Then he darted off into the shadow again. Miss Flora McFlimsey straightened up. What happened next could have never been explained. Perhaps Timothy Mouse ran up the tree and whispered in the angel's ear. Or perhaps the angel leaned over and saw Miss McFlimsey and decided to come down and help and do, and down she came, right to Miss Flora McFlimsey's side and opened the trunk that had opened miraculously under the Christmas tree. And there on the very top was the little gold locket and chain that Miss Flora McFlimsey had worn that first Christmas Eve. Miss Flora McFlimsey sat up very straight, holding her ermine muff in front of her. The doll in the red coat and the bride doll sat up very straight too. They were all looking forward, looking toward the door where the children would come in. It would soon be morning. "They will like me best, I think," whispered the old doll in the red coat. "I am dressed in the very latest style." "I don't know about that," said the bride doll. "There's nothing so beautiful as a bride, you know." Miss Flora McFlimsey said nothing, but she trembled a little. At that moment she heard footsteps running down the stairs and shouts of the red Christmas and shouts of Merry Christmas. And then the wonderful thing that she had just felt was about to happen really did happen. It was Diana who spied her first. "Oh, look at the old doll," Diana cried. "Isn't she beautiful?" "And look at all her dresses and things," cried Susie. "And her trunk," said Toto. I love her," said Diana, and she took Miss Flora McFlimsey in her arms. "Let me hold her," cried Susie. "And please let me dress her," cried Toto. And the doll in the red coat and the bride doll, well, no one paid very much attention to them. But Miss Flora McFlimsey was happy. For once again, on a Christmas morning, she had been hugged and kissed by a little girl.